Everyone knows the story of the tortoise and the hare, one unsuited for the race but unwilling to quit, the other with all the advantages necessary to win, undone by their own hubris. This version begins the same way and perhaps could have played out differently if only the race had been against one tortoise instead of 4. Hi, I'm Dan Larson and this is the history of Bucky O'Hare. Bucky O'Hare is a comic book, a cartoon, a video game, and an action figure line that hit the height of its popularity in 1992, which, during the height of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles' popularity, is like being the best boneless wings at Chuck E. Cheese's. Everybody's here for the pizza, baby.
Pizza time.
Bucky O'Hare stars a green anthropomorphic space rabbit named Bucky O'Hare. His adventures take place in an alternate universe similar to ours, but zoologically distinct. Although our own universe is so vast and unexplored, maybe his universe is just far, far away. Bucky is the captain of a spaceship called the Righteous Indignation. He's joined on his adventures by his crew, which includes First Mate and Pilot Jenny, Gunner Deadeye Duck, Android First Class Blinky, and Bruce, a Beetlejuicean berserker baboon who also serves as Chief Engineer. Bucky and his crew are part of a government organization called SPACE, or Sentient Protoplasm Against Colonial Encroachment. See, the United Animals Federation is at war with the Toad Empire. The Toad Empire is engaged in an aggressive campaign to subjugate the entire universe, robbing every world of their natural resources, as empires do. There was a time, long ago, that the Toads of the Toad Empire were just regular, everyday Toad folk like you and me, going to their Toad jobs, driving their Toad cars, grinding themselves to their Toad bones to accumulate more things than their Toad neighbors, as if there's some kind of Toad trophy at the end for the Toad who died with the most Toad stuff. Looking for a way to increase the rate of productivity and profits to satisfy the hunger of the industrialist Toad kings, the Toad scientists created a computer that would centralize all of the computer functions around the Toad world, a veritable Toad Skynet of interlinked computer systems. The mega-computer became sentient, named itself Complex, and lobotomized everyone. Why the name Complex? Simple. In Toad talk, Complex is an anagram of Feed Me. In response to the ever-increasing threat of the Toad Empire expansion, the United Animals Security Council spent 5 years debating the best way to handle the threat. The result was the formation of SPACE and the allocation of enough funds for 3 spaceships with photon accelerator engines, a dry dock, and a snack bar. But don't lose hope just yet. While Bucky's ship is technically 1/3 of the entire fleet attempting to prevent total domination of the universe by the Toad Empire, they have one more ally in the fight. Wally DeWitt, a human from San Francisco, California, here on our Earth, who is almost old enough to ride his bike to the store at the end of the block by himself, has invented a photon accelerator that warps space in conjunction with the photon accelerator on the Righteous Indignation. This allows him to travel between dimensions as long as his photon accelerator on Earth and the one on the Righteous Indignation remain turned on. Wally uses the doorway and his genius intellect in the fight to save the animal universe until one day his parents unwittingly turn off his photon accelerator, trapping him in the animal universe dimension. The mission parameters have changed. Not only are they in a fight for freedom in the face of tyranny throughout the galaxy, but now they must also find a way to get Wally back home. Bucky O'Hare was created by Larry Hama and Michael Golden in 1977 and 1978. Hama completed his service to the U.S. Army in 1971 and moved on to commercial illustration and ultimately comic books. Initially, Hama was an assistant to comics legend Wally Wood, then later joined comics legend Neil Adams' studio, Continuity Associates. By 1977, his work had been published in magazines like Rolling Stone and Esquire, and he had illustrated for both Marvel, DC, and several other independent publishers. Hama was introduced to the work of Michael Golden as the editor of the DC comic book series Mr. Miracle in 1977. At the time, DC was exploring options for creator-owned books, and Larry had some ideas. While superheroes were the flavor of the day, Hama was looking to work on something a little more science fiction, a little more space opera, something with talking funny animals. Funny animal books were a staple of comics for decades before Hama started kicking his ideas around. DC itself owned characters like Peter Panda, Doodles Duck, McSnurtle the Turtle, Willy the Worm, Arsenic the Giraffe, Dopey Dick, Eager Beaver, Colonel Walrus, Sir Spot, Presto Pete, and of course Talkie Tawny and Hoppy the Marvel Bunny.
Nice job.
Hey, hey, you ever read that McSnurtle the Turtle? Not as good as Eager Beaver or Dopey Dick. I don't know what kind of animal Dopey Dick is. Don't Google it.
Tired of smooth skin? Try Warts Up, the amazing new wart cream. We interrupt Toad TV for an update on Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars. The Toad Air Marshal has ordered his Storm Toads to crush the Freedom Fighters. Captain Bucky O'Hare.
Battle stations!
Gunner Deadeye Duck.
Let's group toads!
And Boy Genius Willie DeWitt.
Ever see a toad fly?
Yeah, those filthy mammals!
Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars.
New Bucky O'Hare action figures sold separately.
And now back to Toad TV.
Hey, way to go!
Star Wars hit theaters in 1977, pushing everything in the world towards science fiction and space war. But even that galaxy wasn't immune to the soft, fuzzy touch of funny animal fingers, and I don't mean Chewbacca. Jackson, a 6-foot-tall green space rabbit, is one of the first original characters created by Marvel for the Star Wars universe, made his first appearance in 1978's Star Wars #8. It was amidst this flurry of space adventure and talking animals that Hama developed the Bucky O'Hare characters and concepts. DC was very interested, but Hama was careful. DC wanted to know what he had before offering him a contract. Despite the allure of potentially being the first creator-owned DC title, Hama held out for a legally binding agreement, which never came. Bucky's time would have to wait. The years that followed saw an increase of independent comics and publishers, as well as comics featuring anthropomorphized characters. In 1982, DC introduced Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Crew. In 1983, an anthology book called Albedo Anthropomorphics, published by Thoughts and Images, began, and just a year later in 1984 featured the first appearance of Usagi Yojimbo. By this time, Larry Hama was a writer and editor at Marvel Comics, working on titles like G.I. Joe, Daredevil, Conan, Falcon, Machine Man, and one of the most important characters in the history of Western literature, Peter Porker the Spectacular Spider-Ham. Bucky O'Hare finally found a home in 1984 with comics legend Neil Adams' Continuity Comics. Having conceptualized every aspect of the animal universe, or Aniverse, from the beginning, Hama had always assumed that he would both write and illustrate the book. However, Michael Golden's artwork was more than enough to convince both Hama and Adams that Golden could do it better than either of them, so Golden got the job. Bucky was now a team project. Hama, Golden, and Adams were all equally invested in making Bucky into a star. Bucky made his first appearance in Continuity Comics' anthology book called Echo of Future Past, issues 1 through 6. That 48-page story would later be collected into a graphic novel, also published by Continuity, and that was it. For all intents and purposes, Bucky O'Hare had taken a shot and the market declined. That said, 1984 was a very important year for anthropomorphized superheroes in general. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird introduced the world to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That independent book kicked off a franchise that grew year over year until by 1989 you couldn't go to a comic book store, a toy store, an arcade, you couldn't turn on a television or go to a movie theater without seeing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And when a property succeeds like that, everybody wants in on the action. It was only a matter of time before Bucky was called back to duty. In 1991, Continuity Comics reintroduced Bucky O'Hare in a 5-issue series that expanded on the original story from 1984 and coincided with the release of a new Bucky O'Hare animated series and action figure line. Those darn Ninja Turtles had taken over everything. Hasbro was feeling the pressure in the toy aisle. Bucky O'Hare seemed like a natural fit for kids and parents looking for action figures of a comparable size and aesthetic. Larry Hama played the long game. He had intended since day one for Bucky to be an action figure line, going so far as to include peg holes on the feet of the comic character designs. He had designed them as toys before he figured out the story.
Everything was finally coming together.
Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars was developed by Sunbow Productions, Abrams Gentile Entertainment, Continuity Comics, and IDDH. It was co-produced by Marvel Productions and distributed by Hasbro subsidiary Claster Television. It was animated by ACOM, the same company that animated G.I. Joe, the Transformers, X-Men the Animated Series, Batman the Animated Series, and a whole lot more. Larry Hama served as a story consultant, but the writing and direction were handled by other creators. Christy Marks, who had written for shows like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, G.I. Joe, Captain Power, Gem, Dino Riders, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, contributed 6 of the 13. Comics legend and Continuity Comics founder Neil Adams himself wrote the final episode. 13 episodes aired from September to December of 1991. The plot generally follows the plot of the comics, with some adjustments to expand the story and the world it takes place in, including tying the events of the initial story arc directly to Bucky's home planet. it. Complex, the all-powerful computer, still exists and still calls the shots within the Toad Empire. However, the Toads in the Toad Empire are now regular Imperial soldiers bound by duty and loyalty to the Empire, as opposed to lobotomized slaves. Willie is no longer trapped in the alternate universe, but can travel between dimensions. Bruce is more lost than dead, and Dead-Eye Duck has a different accent, or rather, maybe not the one you heard in your head when you were reading the comics. 13 episodes of an animated series allowed for the introduction of more characters like Commander Dogstar, an ally of Bucky's, and the captain of the spaceship the Indefatigable, Mimi LaFleur, an ally of Bucky's, and captain of the spaceship the Screaming Mimi, Al Negator, a spy for the Toad Empire, and Bruiser, the Beetlejuicean berserker baboon, brother to the dimensionally displaced Bruce. In 1991, Hasbro released a line of action figures to coincide with the animated series: Bucky O'Hare, Dead-Eye Duck, Willie DeWitt, Blinky, Bruiser, and Commander Dogstar for the good guys, Toadborg, Air Marshal, Storm Toad Trooper, and Al Negator for the bad guys. Most figures had 5 points of articulation and were scaled to fit seamlessly with your pre-existing and expanding Ninja Turtles collection. Bucky could cruise into battle in the Toad Croaker, while the Toad Empire would attack in their Toad Double Bubble. Each figure came with at least one accessory. Blister cards featured Michael Golden art, and a file card on the back with information about the character, an homage to Larry Hama's work as the guy writing all the file cards for G.I. Joe action figures at Hasbro to begin with. In 1992, DC Thompson & Company took the comic book series a step further for the UK audience. First, they re-released the initial 5 issues of Bucky O'Hare and then added an additional 15 issues over the next year to close out the original story and build out the universe even more. Unfortunately, none of that additional content would be handled by Larry Hama or Michael Golden. In 1992, Konami released Bucky O'Hare for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Mostly side-scrolling adventures that require you to reunite the crew members, allowing you to toggle between them to utilize different skills, like Mega Man, Contra, and the Ninja Turtles games all mashed together. They also released an arcade unit similar to other Konami releases like Sunset Riders or Cowboys of Moo Mesa. The game takes the story a bit further than previously released media, actually allowing for a final victory over the Toad Empire. And if you're so inclined, you can take Bucky with you in Konami's handheld LCD game, Bucky O'Hare. Bucky can be found on a variety of other merchandise, including activity books, sticker books, watches, coloring books, lunch boxes, and paint by number, color forms, sleeping bags, shoes, party supplies, and puzzles. If you missed all 13 episodes of Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars the first time, Family Home Entertainment released episodes on VHS. Episodes are available at the Internet Archive and here and there on YouTube. You can find Bucky on DVD in the UK and a few other countries, but there has yet to be a full release on DVD in the US. Despite plans for subsequent waves that would have included characters like Jenny, Pit Stop Pete, Sly Lizard, Rumblebee, Total Terror Toad, and even a version of Complex itself, the line, the show, the comic, everything was canceled. Bucky O'Hare faded into the background with the majority of the other anthropomorphic creations before, during, and after the Ninja Turtles' reign over pop culture. In 2006, there was a report of a possible Neil Adams-led movie which may or may not have been the CG short that you can now watch on YouTube. In 2007, Vanguard re-released the initial 5-issue storyline with 2 issues from the UK series in a black and white digest or manga format. And fans must have felt like the photon accelerator had been turned back on in 2017 when Boss Fight Studios announced that they had acquired the license for Bucky O'Hare and would be producing a series of 4-inch scaled, highly articulated action figures, showcasing Bucky and characters from his universe in a way that they had never been presented before. Each figure with interchangeable hands and multiple facial expressions, detailed sculpts and paint applications, characters pulled from Michael Golden's art in the comics back in 1984. Bucky and Jenny were the first figures released, followed by Dead-Eye Duck and Storm Toad Trooper and Mimi LaFleur. Since then, Boss Fight has released variations like Stealth Mission Bucky and Astral Projection Jenny, and Easter-themed Chocolate Bucky O'Hare, Corsair Canard Dead-Eye Duck packaged in a metal lunchbox for the full injection of nostalgia, and even Bruiser the Beetlejuicean Berserker Baboon as a deluxe figure to maintain the scale of the characters. No closer to a movie, an animated series, a new game, or comics, the adventures of Bucky O'Hare happen exactly the way that Larry Hama conceived of the line. Through action figures and imagination, it's up to you now to carry out the mission to go croak some toads. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you haven't heard, we started a second channel called Toy Galaxy 2, that's T-O-O. Head over there and subscribe for stuff we don't post here. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon or become a YouTube channel member. Please share this video and let us know in the comments down below when you first discovered Bucky O'Hare and the crew of the Righteous Indignation. In the comics in 1984, in the comics, toys, and animated series in 1991, the video game in 1992, 1992, the Boss Fight Studios action figures in 2017, today? And more importantly, if you're Team Bucky O'Hare or Team Kick the Damn Rabbit.
Cut.